We estimate that based on the analysis of 31 countries, 36 billion euros was lost in scams. We discovered that scams are huge. More than 123 million scams were reported to the police last year, but that's still probably only a fraction of what's really going on.
Great to have you, Jorij. For those who are not familiar with your work, maybe you can share with us a little bit about yourself and walk us through the early days of your career.
Okay, my name is Jorij Abraham. I run the e-commerce foundation. Our mission is to foster global digital trade, and the idea behind that is that the more we trade across countries, hopefully the less we will fight. And we do that in several ways. We publish reports on e-commerce, how to sell online in Germany, the USA, China. We host a online community for e-commerce professionals called ecommercewiki.org, where about 40,000 e-commerce professionals share their knowledge and insights. We have a trust seal called safe.shop, which allows small merchants to sell across the globe. And finally, we have ScamAdviser.com. And ScamAdviser is an online algorithm to identify if a website is either legit or a scam. And ScamAdviser has now about 100,000 consumers every day checking if a website is reliable or not. But our data is also being used by companies like Kaspersky, F-Secure, Trend Micro, many DNS filters to protect consumers worldwide. So that's a brief overview of what we do.
Jorij, you're both the GM for ScamAdviser and e-commerce foundation. Can you give us the relation between the two organizations?
Yes. ScamAdviser actually happened by accident, as many good things happen by accident, including becoming a father. We launched Safe.shop in 2016 as a global trust seal. And to give it a boost, we acquired ScamAdviser.com. ScamAdviser was set up by Mark, a developer from the UK, in 2012. As you may know, nothing is as dangerous as an angry developer, because Mark got scammed in 2012. He bought a golf set online. It proved to be a fake, and he was very angry. So he started to develop an online algorithm to determine if a website is legit or not. And that turned into ScamAdviser. So we acquired ScamAdviser in 2018, but we very quickly discovered that it's not only good for giving Safe.shop the trust seal a boost, but also really helping a lot of consumers worldwide to not get scammed. So we focus now more and more on ScamAdviser to help consumers.
I'm fascinated with Mark's story. Where did he buy the golf set? In Europe or somewhere else?
No, unfortunately, he bought it in China, and
Okay.
China has unfortunately a very bad reputation when it comes to online web shops. I mean, a lot of fakes, a lot of websites not delivering. It's really something the Chinese government should be concerned about, because it's harming the brand name of China as a online retailer.
I want to start by asking you, you conducted a research way back in 2019 entitled The Global State of Scams in 2020. And there you noted that 36 billion were lost on online scams. And it's growing. You predicted that it'll grow by 40% in 2020. Can you give us more information about this research?
Yes, of course. As part of ScamAdviser.com, we wanted to better understand how big is online scams worldwide, and we quickly discovered there's no global data on it. So what we did is we analyzed 31 countries representing about 85% of the global GDP, and in each country we looked at, okay, how many people are getting scammed, and how many people are reporting scams to the police, and how much money is being lost, and what is the country doing to prevent consumers getting scammed or apprehending scammers. And that turned into our first State of Global Scam report, which was published last November. And it got a lot of media attention. We were covered in more than 1,300 websites. We learned several things. One is, as you said, we estimate that based on the analysis of 31 countries, 36 billion euros was lost in scams. Very honestly, I think it's we only see the tip of the iceberg, because we know from other research that only 7% of all the scams are actually reported to the police, because people feel ashamed, people feel the amount being lost is not so big, it's not worth the trouble, or they have no clue where to report a scam because not all the police forces are open to receiving reports about scams. So based on our study, we discovered that scams are huge, a lot of money being lost. More than 123 million scams were reported to the police last year, but that's still probably only a fraction of what's really going on.
Yeah, I noticed you're working with several organizations and agencies and even the police department, and you're working with the APWG, the Anti-Phishing Working Group, and even the Global Cyber Alliance. So how is it working so far? How's the collaboration helping in terms of you addressing the cybercrime issues?
Our goal is really to, with ScamAdviser, to become the global database of scams. And the reason for this is that scammers work globally, but our entire legislation is in most cases national. And what scammers are very much aware of is that as long as they do their scams across their own country border, and they also disperse it a little bit about across many countries, then the chance of getting caught is nearly zero, because police don't have the authority to apprehend scammers in other countries. We do have organizations like Europol and Interpol, but in my personal view, they're underfunded, understaffed, and they have a lot of crimes to fight. So that's the reason for setting up a global database, to share as much information with as many organizations as possible, to know that, hey, this scammer is not only operating in one country, they're operating in 60 countries with 300 different websites. And that's the data we're trying to make available to as many parties as possible. And we do this, as you said, indeed, together with the Anti-Phishing Work Group and the Global Cyber Alliance, where we share as much data as possible to make it easier for law enforcement, for hosting companies, for registrars, for registries to identify scam networks and take them down.
Yeah, George, is there an easy way to spot a phishing website or an online scammer? Do you have to be technically savvy to really know and pinpoint who the scammers are?
The basic rule, if it's too good to be true, it very, very, very probably is a scam.
I agree.
That basic rule applies. The challenge here is that scammers are very professional and getting more and more professional every day. They're smart. They're very marketing savvy. I mean, you saw it with Corona. As soon as the Corona epidemic started, you could buy fake masks, fake vaccine, fake respirators, which were never delivered. Scammers are very marketing savvy, and they see when a trend is picking up and are the first ones to get on board and scam people. We see the number of scams increasing continuously. So apart from not being, if it's too good to be true, we recommend go to ScamAdviser and check a website, because all the technical checking we do for you, because you cannot ask a consumer to see if the SSL certificate is valid, if the reviews are real reviews, if there are other bad sites on the same IP address. It's too technical. What I try to envision is, okay, how can I make it easy for my mother, who is 82, to see if something is a scam or not? And that's typing in the domain name and just saying it's very likely a scam or it's legit. That's what consumers understand. We have to make it easy for them. So those are the two main rules. If it's too good to be true, don't do it, and always check ScamAdviser, because that makes it easy for consumers.
Okay, let's talk about ScamAdviser. I understand that you're leveraging on technology to make this system work well, and you're using AI to improve the system over time. Can you give us more information about how does the AI work? I'm sure this is still supervised learning. You're using machine learning, right? And you still feed the data to the system. Can you give us more information about how the system works?
Maybe first about how the algorithm works in general, and then we zoom in on the AI part.
Okay.
The algorithm in general, we check about 40 different data sources, and we defined since 2012, we developed more than 1,000 business rules based on those data sources. So you have a website from the Philippines, but it's hosted in China, which is okay. But then if Dutch milk is being offered on that website, then it becomes a little bit suspicious, because why is a Chinese website offering Dutch milk. We lower the trust score a little bit. Then on the same server, we see 200 other websites which seem to be exact copies of the same website but with a different name. That's suspicious because why should you just copy your website over and over? There's no reason for it marketing wise to do so. So we lower the trust score. Then we notice that this website has been reported for phishing by the anti-phishing work group. We definitely lower their trust score. We see that the reviews on Google Shopping, on Trustpilot are very low. We lower the trust score. So this is how we in general work. And what we are indeed now doing is training in AI to recognize websites faster. We try to fingerprint them because we are lucky in one way. Scammers are lazy. They're smart, but they're also lazy. So they copy their work. They use the same technology, the same text, the same pictures over and over again. And that's why we're using the AI for, making a estimate of what's the chance of this website being owned by the same website we already identified as being a scam. Very honestly, we're still struggling. AI, I mean, it sounds nice on paper, but really educating an AI is difficult and providing it with the right data. Because if your data is not clean, the AI is learning something you don't want it to learn. I mean, we all heard about the Microsoft with the voice AI, which was educated to be racist because of the data it was provided. Same here. The first few times we discovered that, okay, we're not, the data we're inputting it tends to be very negative on certain forms, which is not, in the end, not true. And that because the data we put into the system was tending to be oriented one way, so mainly websites from one country, and then it thought, okay, all the websites from this country are bad. But that's not the case. So you really have to feed it very, very clean data, both positive and negative, to make sure that the AI is drawing the right conclusions. So we're still working on it, still struggling, but we're now at 86% right, in the sense of the 100 websites we feed it, 86 it recognizes correctly as a scam. And only 3 to 4% of the website it says it's a scam is not. So those figures sound promising, but knowing that we scan more than 1 million websites every month, the percentage of false positives has to be improved a lot before we can really use it.
How does the trust scoring work, Jorij? Do you do data scraping or do you partner with an organization like Trustpilot? How do you do it?
We use both. We scrape for content, we access APIs for content. We have a lot of business partners supporting us. So Solvin, for example, is one of our data partners. They check the quality of the SSL certificate for us. We work together with BuildWith. It's very good at recognizing which technologies are being used, and they offer us free access to their database so that we can check, okay, how much money is being spent on this website. Because until now, we never came across a website of a scammer who is using Salesforce or IBM. Sometimes it's that simple. So we scrape, but we also have a lot of partners supporting us with their data, for which we are very, very grateful.
What are the profile of those consumers that are scammed? And also, on the other side, what are the behavior of those scammers? What do they usually do?
Maybe first talking about the victim. The general idea is that people who get scammed are stupid. And I think that's not the case. We've done several studies interviewing scam victims, and they represent the global population one-on-one. It's rich, it's poor, it's no education to PhD. Actually, our study found that PhDs are more likely to be scammed than people with no education. Scammers are, as I said, scammers are great marketeers. We can actually learn a lot from them. You probably also received emails with, you won 100 million euros.
Yeah.
Just give me your credit card and number and I will transfer the money to you. Those emails are not meant for people with a high education. That they put in the emails on purpose, they put typos and grammar mistakes, because they don't want people to reply who know it's a scam. They really target scams at specific target groups. And you have the romantic dating scams, which target mainly women from middle-aged groups, because women from middle-aged groups who are single are easy to fall for romantic dating scams. You have investment scams, which target mainly people who are retired, who have a pension, and are looking for ways to increase their pension a little bit, mainly not for themselves, but for their children. So we just published actually an article which describes how scammers are really fattening up the pig, in the sense of they spend 3 months or 6 months taking the time to get into contact with a potential victim, convincing them that they're real, sending everyday messages, maybe starting off with something completely innocent, and very slowly over 3 to 6 months starting to talk about investment opportunities, and that they invested somewhere themselves and they made a nice little bit of money. So scammers are really professional and everybody can get scammed. So that's regarding the victim. Scammer is a different story. We see many different kinds of scammers. Some of them are mainly boys, 14 to 16 years old. They start a web shop because they want to make money, and then they get their first order and they forget to deliver, and then they say, "Hey, I got the money." And that's a certain group which starts scamming people because it's relatively easy and they make a little bit of money. They're criminals, but they're, how do you say, unprofessional. That's one target group. Then you quickly go into the professional scammers. There are entire networks of scammers where you have the admin at top. The admin develops software. You have a out-of-the-box investment website which you can set up. The admin makes money by selling that software to sellers. And the sellers, again, sell it to scapegoats who actually use their real name, and they start a company. So you create a kind of pyramid where the scammers at the bottom are the ones who are getting caught by the police. But the middleman and the owner of the software is never caught because they are professionals, and they make sure that the ones who are using real credit cards and real names, they get caught, but they who actually collect the money are not. So on the scammer side, we have very unprofessional amateurs, but more and more really cartels of very professional cyber criminals who set up networks where they make sure that they are never caught, but only the front soldiers are getting caught by the police.
Do you have a percentage of how many are doing this for money and some kids are doing this for kicks?
Yes.
Like, do we have that ratio of who are the professionals and how big are those who are just doing this for kicks?
You're absolutely right. Some people are doing it for the kick, but my gut feeling is only a few percent do it for the kick. A few percent are unprofessional and doing it to make money. But the real professionals, they're definitely doing it for the money and they're making millions. But they have entire factories. I mean, you know about the stories of call centers from India phoning people every day, trying to get credit card details or subscription scams. The volume of scams created is definitely the 80-20 rule, and probably more than 99-1 rule. So 1% being doing it for the kick, unprofessional, but 99% of the scams are professionally planned factories producing scam after scam after scam. We have come across scam networks with up to 10,000 websites doing the same thing. And as soon as one website is being taken down, they automatically set up the next one and continue the process. So going back to your question, yes, a few do it for the kicks, feeling that they get some money from a rich pig. But most of the scams we actually facing are professional criminals who are doing it to make a lot of money.
Yeah, this is interesting because I'm not sure if you've heard about the hacking of the Colonial oil pipeline in the US. It's the largest oil pipeline, and it was hacked by, they say they were Russians who hacked the system. It's actually a ransomware. They're asking for money. And one of the cybersecurity experts mentioned, I'm following Pat Bet David of Valuetainment, and they talked about this, and they say that the hackers now are more creative than the police. The criminals are more creative than the enforcers.
I fear that is true. I mean, we work together with a lot of law enforcement agencies. What we see is that the number of scams reported to law enforcement, depending on the country, but in many Western countries, you see now that 20 to 30% of all crimes reported to the police are related to online fraud and scams. and the police is overwhelmed with the volume. And the problem is that there is still little attention for online scams with the law enforcement, and they don't have the right tools and they don't have the right skills. So yes, they are catching up, but I fear it will be several years before law enforcement can really fight online scams. And the biggest challenge we have is, as I said before, law enforcement are always national orientated, and scammers work globally. So we're fighting scams, which is a global disease in my view, with local tools. And until we figure out that scams has to be fought by organizations like Europol and Interpol with a lot more power and budget and resources, scammers will be winning because it's easy money and low risk.
Jorij, who do you think is responsible to mitigate these types of crimes? Is it the government? Is it the hosting company? Is it the individual, the enforcers? What do you think can be done or must be done to at least minimize crimes like this?
It's a good question. Scams it's a value chain. And I think many parties are responsible for fighting scams. As you know, it starts with setting up a website, and you need to register a name, you need to set up a website. So there already, in my personal feeling, the registry, the registrar, the hosting company have responsibility that they are not supporting a scammer. And many say, hey, I'm not the police force, I am just providing infrastructure. But what I find very strange is that if you want to set up a physical store, you have to identify yourself to the landlord with your bank account, your ID, your Chamber of Commerce number, a lot of paperwork. You have to provide that you are certified to open a food store to the municipality. So there are a lot of rules. And why suddenly on the internet we were dropping the rules? So on the internet I can sell anything to anybody, while in the physical world I have to do a lot of paperwork. And I think we have to move a little bit back to that model where some verification is necessary. We've seen it with the Dutch register, the Danish registry, the .dk. They were able to reduce the number of web shops using .dk in the internet name with 80% in 1 year by just saying, hey, if you want to register a .dk name, you have to show an ID, and that's it. So a little bit of know your customer processes should be done by hosting companies, by registries, in my view. And I strongly believe in an open internet, but if you want to sell online, you should be asked to do some due diligence. Then the second step, where what scammers do is after they've set up their website and registered their name, is promote it. Facebook, Google, they don't do much checking. I mean, it's very easy to start advertising on Facebook. It's very easy to start advertising on Google. We've known scammers spending actually millions of dollars on Google ads in 3 weeks' time. They spent $3 million in 3 weeks on promoting a web shop which never delivered the goods. And after 3 weeks, yes, they were taken down by Google in the sense they could no longer advertise. But in those 3 weeks, they made a lot more money than the $3 million they spent on Google ads. So also there, more vetting is necessary. Then, of course, scammers can still cheat. I mean, for £12 in the UK, you can set up a company. We continuously come across the same countries where scammers operate or operate officially from. It's the UK, it's Cyprus, it's Malta. A lot of companies, unfortunately, from China and Hong Kong, it's easy to set up a company, and it's easy to start scamming. Also there, I think more vetting is necessary. And then you move to the consumer, and the consumer also has responsibility. And I always think that greed lowers your IQ with 50 points, because if somebody offers you a return on investment of 1% per day, then I think nearly everybody should be able to say, hey, this might be a little bit too good to be true. So yes, hosting companies are responsible, registries, registrars are responsible, marketing channels like Facebook and Google are responsible, but there's also responsibility with the consumer. And I think where governments should be involved is educating consumers and giving law enforcement more international to fight scammers, because there we really miss international legislation to fight scammers better, because now it's very difficult to share data. Law enforcement is often not allowed to share data, while sharing domain names and malicious email addresses and IP numbers, they're nothing to do with persons. We should be able to share that data to fight scammers globally better.
Okay, let's talk more about ScamAdviser. This is just a tool for people to use, for them to check about the legitimacy of a website. What assurance are you giving those who are checking these domain names? And also, is there a case for you where the trust score that you actually gave was inaccurate? Was there a time that it happened?
It's an algorithm, and like humans, the algorithm is not perfect, but we are getting better. Yes, it happens that we're wrong. So we always emphasize also to people that the trust score we give a website is just an indication. You always have to do your own checking, and we also explain how people can do manually checking. If we're wrong, we do get hundreds of emails a day from consumers. We do a lot of manual checking and vetting. So that's on the side where we say, well, we think this website might be legit and we're wrong. So we get a lot of feedback from consumers stating that they were scammed or that they think we should check a website more, and we do that. We also get sometimes complaints from webshop owners. We get about 5-6 emails from websites owners a week. And the first step we always do is, thank you for reporting this to us. Could you please send us your company registration and the ID of at least one of the shareholders? From 4 of the 5 emails we get, we never get any reply back, meaning that for some reason they're not willing to provide any company details. If they do, we do a manual check, and also there 2 out of 3 we're not wrong. They're selling fakes, or they're offering a financial service with a return on investment of 1% per day. And we say, well, you may not be a scam, but you're offering a financial service which is extremely high risk, and therefore we give you a low trust rating. And what's interesting, since 2012, we never ever got sued. We might be wrong sometimes, and we're very happy to correct it. But until now, I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. Do you think data privacy is an issue why these organizations are not giving this information, or they're generally just really doing something wrong?
If you're a company, there's no legislation that you are allowed to hide your details. I mean, you're a company, you're selling to consumers.
Yeah,
GDPR does not apply. And very honestly, yes, I think they're hiding. They're doing a scam, and they're just trying to get a higher trust score. We get several emails a week from people, always with Gmail addresses, saying, hey, how much do you want to give me a higher trust score? We're being offered quite some money sometimes. And yeah, scammers don't like us. They're either offering us a bribe, or they're saying, we know where you live and we know where your children are going to school. And that's the bad side of this business. And we're not very popular among scammers. But the good thing is we're doing a lot of good for the consumers. Related to GDPR, the worst product the European Union ever came with was the GDPR legislation, at least regarding the fighting of scams. It was a big mistake that all the Whois data is now mainly anonymous. Yes, the Whois data was misused for marketing efforts. Therefore, a lot of people are hiding their contact details, but it made life very easy for scammers. You can set up a store and be unknown, and that really should not be the case. So I'm very glad that there's now some pushback from several members of parliament in the European Commission to say, well, GDPR legislation is good, but it should not apply to who owns this website. That information should be public because you're offering a service, and it should be known who's behind it.
Assuming there's a case that you need to escalate and put it through a process, is there a dispute resolution body in Europe now? Or do you have a process to handle these types of frauds?
There is an organization called the European Consumer Centers. They were initiated by the European Commission, and every country has its own center. And the center is mainly focused on if you bought something from Bulgaria as a German person and the product is not delivered, you can complain to the German Consumer Center to help you resolve the issue. But they do not focus on scams. They only focus on web shops which are mainly legit, but for some reason not delivering the product. As far as I'm aware, some countries have a fraud help desk. I mean, in the Netherlands, where I live, there's a fraud help desk helping consumers who got scammed. The same in the UK. You have ScamWatch in Australia. FBI is very active in the USA, and also the Federal Trade Commission is very active. But the problem here is they're all national initiatives, and due to the GDPR legislation, they're not allowed to share data, and that keeps life very easy for scammers, because in the Netherlands alone we have more than 17 different organizations who receive reports about scams. They cannot share that data, and as a result the scammer remains largely invisible.
There are trustmark organizations in Asia that does the dispute resolution themselves. Do you say that doing it yourself is a good model to imitate, or should a dispute resolution body be done by an external party?
Dispute resolution, by definition, should always be done by an objective party. A web shop should always first solve any issues with his customers, him or herself. If you want to gain trust as a web shop, the most important thing is keeping to your promises, making sure you deliver on time the right product in the right way. But if for some reason you're unsuccessful and you cannot resolve the issue, then going first to a national dispute resolution center is a good idea. And many trust seals offer a dispute resolution service where I think as now, depending on the country, 30% to up to 85% of all e-commerce is across the border. International dispute resolution becomes more and more important. And I think there is still a gap, and that's a gap we're trying to resolve with Safe.shop, our trust seal.
What's the future for ScamAdviser? Are there any projects that you're doing right now, or any technologies that you're incorporating for the system?
We have so many plans. I mean, there's so many scams, so many plans. Our priority at the moment is first to become very, very, very good at determining, is this website legit or a scam? That's our priority for this year. Where we want to expand to next year is towards email addresses, wallet IDs, to expand the objects scammers are using. I mean, scammers are using phone numbers. That's where we want to expand to next year. For this year, the focus is really becoming 99% good at identifying if a website is legit or a scam, together with our partners. So we work together also with F-Secure, Trend Micro, NetSweeper, to make our data more reliable and share that data also with them so that they can protect their users. So for example, Trend Micro has incorporated our data into their antivirus solution to warn consumers, which is about 50% of all Americans are using their software, to warn their consumers, hey, you're now accessing a website which might be a scam. Are you sure you want to proceed? So that's the focus for this year, improving our algorithm and sharing our data as much as possible. So if anybody is listening and interested to join our fight by sharing data or using our data, please feel free to contact me.
How do we support you moving forward, Jorij? Where do we follow you? On Facebook, YouTube, Instagram? Where are you usually at?
Do you see the gray hair? I'm old-fashioned. LinkedIn. So if you Google my name on LinkedIn, you will definitely find me.
Okay, this is the most exciting part of the episode. I'll throw you some questions. I want your top-of-mind answer. Don't overthink. Just spit it out.
Okay.
Jorij, in one word.
Happy.
What makes your heart sing?
Helping people.
What's one thing you wish you had invented?
The wheel.
Okay. What inspires you to get going?
Helping people really inspires me and gives me a lot of energy.
What do you think you're doing now if you're not an entrepreneur?
Working for charity.
What's the most searched topic on your browser history?
At the moment, anything related to scams and fraud and cybercrime.
What's the best advice you ever received?
From my dad, take the responsibility you have been given.
Okay. If you had 3 people over for a dinner, who would you love to have there and why?
My wife and my children. I love them.
Okay. What do you want your children to say about you as a dad?
He's a good man.
You've been very successful and made a great contribution to society. If you were to die tomorrow, you look back and think about your life. What would you have done more of or less of?
That's exactly the reason why I focus on Safe.shop and ScamAdviser. When I want to die knowing I did something good, and I have the feeling I'm doing something good. So I'm happy.
Leave a legacy. Thanks a lot, Jorij. Thanks a lot for a very insightful interview.
You're very welcome. I really enjoyed it, and I wish you good luck with your show. It's super. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.